Good morning. So I have made my tea, but I have not yet drunk my tea. So I am a little decaffeinated still this morning. It has been a wild week in Maine for events. So we had a really horrific shark death, which was the first attack of fatal attack of a shark that I think anybody's ever recorded in Maine. That was sort of phenomenal. It was the same day as we had tornado watches. We now have a hurricane headed for us. So we have a lot of global weirding headed our way. And, that brings me to the fact that we really haven't been focusing very much on the climate emergency with what we've got going on in the world. It's very difficult in chaos and fascism to focus on things like our planet's health, but that is something that's really important and we're not hearing enough about. And I want to make sure that when you're talking to people who are running for office or are your current representatives, bring that up. It's important. Everything's important. We've got a lot of important things going on. But if we don't have a habitable planet, then nothing else matters. So I think that gets lost a lot because it's such a giant issue. But if we don't have a place that is our home, all the political stuff isn't important anymore. So we need to make sure that that is staying at the forefront above almost any other issue. Obviously, we've got some massive corruption and other issues at the forefront, but we definitely need to make sure that we're considering that in policy. Not as if much is going on in policy. So down in DC, we had some fairly disturbing reports this week. The Senate has left for the weekend. They left without an aid package completed. There are some pretty drastically different things that the Republican and the Democrat aid packages want to accomplish. I don't know that I love either one. I really think that right now we should be doing a temporary UBI, and there shouldn't be any qualifiers on it. If somebody is wealthy and they get overpaid, oh well, we'll get it later in taxes. When they have been putting qualifiers on things, what happens is there's people who maybe were doing great in 2018 or 2019, but they're not doing well now, and there's really no help available for a lot of those people. So if you are a person who owns a few rental properties and that's your living, you don't have an income right now, most likely. I have multiple clients in that position. If you have a small business that was doing fairly well, and I have multiple clients in this position as well, if you had a small business that was doing fairly well, and it is not a business that is thriving in a pandemic, the PPP loans were just totally inadequate. They were help when they came. I mean, I have one. It came eventually after a whole lot of nagging, but they were for a much shorter duration of time than the pandemic has been. So that is problematic. They had restrictions on them that were also difficult to work within. I know for my business, it was hard because they kept asking for documents that didn't exist because I run a service-based business. I'm an attorney. Trying to get some of this tea in me since I definitely need caffeine this morning. So we have a lot of people that are financially struggling, and a lot of people you wouldn't anticipate that are financially struggling. I know people that you would normally think of as pretty solidly middle class that are struggling because they are used to ongoing revenue streams that don't exist anymore. And we are at a point where this pandemic hit in March, and that was already a slow period of time for a lot of businesses in Maine since we're so tourism focused. We're losing basically a whole summer. Any of the businesses that are getting businesses, at best, it's enough to break even. Those PPP loans were not designed to cover this area, and they're trying to come up with new ones. But if you are giving those PPP loans, first of all, you don't know if they're going to be a loan or if they're forgivable, but you don't know if they're going to be forgiven. They haven't been clear what the forgiveness guidelines are. So you're taking out a debt, and that's a problem. If you're a small business that doesn't have the revenue to repay it, they're not for the period of the pandemic, and they're working on a second one now. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but businesses need the money now. We don't need the money when they get around to it eventually, when they disperse it a few months, maybe. And then we could perhaps possibly pay the money back that we've been living on, if we've been living on credit cards or home equity loans. If we have it, but then we'll have paid interest. The interest most likely is not going to be something that's deductible or forgivable, even though it was a cost of carrying. And the PPP loan doesn't cover everything. So those loans are not great. Yeah, you'll hear Susan Collins just going on about how she authored this fabulous, but it's not fabulous. It's not well written. I understand it was done in an emergency, but the guidelines aren't clear. It's inadequate, and it doesn't help businesses as much as they need the help. You'll find Maine has a ton of small businesses, and frankly, every business owner I talk to that has owned a small business, and this is anecdotal, but every business owner that I talk to would much rather have some sort of universal UBI for them and their employees, and then they can just not worry about, that no one's going to get rich with UBI. UBI is universal basic income, so a monthly reoccurring amount that is sent to each adult, and potentially another amount for children, which may be equal or lesser. So, nobody's going to get rich off UBI. There have been a lot of proposals floated. I think the most common one I've seen is $2,000 a month per adult. I don't think that would be great, but it would be better than nothing. So if we had $2,000 going out per adult, they wouldn't have to worry as much about their employees. Their employees, I'm certain, would be happy to come back when it's safe and everybody feels okay. But they would at least know that every month they'd have enough to eat, and probably have enough, at least in Maine, for housing security. And we may need to scale the UBI. I mean, that's not going to be enough in Manhattan. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat because I hadn't talked at all this morning before I turned on the video. And you may hear, just so everybody's aware, in case noises pop up, I have my 9-year-old sitting off to the side, tucked out of the video frame, and our very theatrical cat has been running back and forth this morning. So you may see either one of those make a brief appearance, or in the shot, or with noise. So the PPP loans are they're not cutting it. They're not going to be enough. A UBI would be a much better solution right now. Small business like mine, I don't want to have to worry about how I'm going to work extra or 2 or 3 times as much. And there's the cat. I don't want to have to worry about how I'm going to make up all of my living expenses plus living expenses now. I'm in a position where, because I'm doing greater childcare, there really aren't childcare options right now. Right now, our options are summer camp, and our kids would love to go to summer camps, but there aren't very many open. The ones that are open, the individual camps, they might be fine, but it's like the worst lottery ever, figuring out if yours is going to be the one that gets hit with COVID. I'm sure you've seen in the news there was a camp this week that was not in Maine, it was in a different state, but had hundreds of campers test positive for COVID-19. So there really aren't a lot of childcare options in Maine. I've had to scale back my hours. I'm not taking nearly any clients. I've cut my intake. I didn't take any clients at all for a while. Now I'm taking maybe one every couple of weeks, maybe. So, I've had to reduce my capacity to work so that I could provide childcare. With our household, it doesn't work. My husband is an essential worker, and he works out at sea, and he's on a 2-week-out, 2-week-in schedule. So when you've got a schedule like that, and that is not uncommon for Maine, we have an awful lot of merchant marines in Maine. Their partner ends up by default being the one who has to sort of handle the childcare at home if they have children. So a lot of people are in that position. A lot of people who own small businesses are in that position, and I think the problem is we have legislators that have just never had to work in this sort of capacity. They haven't been, in the race that I'm in, there's 2 legislators, and neither one of them's ever been middle class. We have 2 very wealthy people that are running for office, and they just don't understand the constraints that are upon people, and that's it. That's not necessarily their fault per se, and I don't know that it's necessarily their fault for being wealthy, but when you don't have people who've experienced middle class and poverty making law, they're just not going to have the frame of reference to be able to address it. So financially, that's fairly devastating for a lot of Maine businesses. There are a lot of Maine businesses that are struggling. I'm getting a ton of emails from people who are wanting to hear what can be done different. And I think we should have UBI. A lot of people are losing health insurance coverage during a pandemic, which is very cost inefficient for a government that is trying to get a handle on this. Not that I think that our government on a federal level really is trying to get a handle on this. So we are in a situation where we should have UBI, and we should have no application, wraparound Medicaid that's just sort of blanket right now. And it doesn't need to cover everything, but we should have that there. So I think we should have Medicaid, not Medicare. That's what we use in Maine, would be called Maine Care. There's a difference. Medicaid is the one that's sort of designed for poverty. Medicare is the one that your grandparents use, your parents use. They are different risk pools, different reimbursements, and they're different programs, although they have similar names and they're easy to confuse. So we should be having Medicaid sort of pop in and say, you don't have to enroll if you're just not covered. Please go get a COVID test if you need one, and we'll take care of it. If you need to go to the hospital for COVID, just go. If you don't have insurance, we'll take care of it. Don't become uninsured purposefully. We're not going to cover everything. We're just going to, we don't have the mechanism in place. We don't have the laws in place to cover everything right now. We don't have the funding sources to cover everything. But if people are going to the hospital anyway for COVID and they're not covered with insurance, ultimately some level of government is going to end up reimbursing the hospital for that. The hospital is going to have resources that come from somewhere. We're probably going to end up paying for it anyway. So let's catch these things earlier so that they cost less and we're not infecting as many people. I would much rather have people go in for preventative testing than create a hotspot, because we've got a whole bunch of people who are uninsured, and that is much more financially devastating to the local economy. It is much worse for the medical system, and it costs us lives. So that wouldn't be a long-term solution, but it certainly would be a solution during the pandemic. We should have that in place. Not being considered right now by Congress, which is really a shame, because it is something that would be beneficial. And there's a bunch of ickiness going on in DC right now. We just found out that off Trump Hotel alone, the president's volunteer daughter, I don't really know what her role is. I really don't believe in nepotism, particularly for unqualified people. If you happen to work with family and your family is qualified, there's certainly a lot of that in Maine, but you shouldn't be bringing along completely unqualified people for jobs. She made almost $4 million last year off of a hotel that people are staying at to curry favor with her father. Like, that is just outrageous and disgusting. That is such, and that's not even hidden. That's just government corruption. They're just pouring money into their pockets from their rolls, and that is so inappropriate. So we're seeing a lot of that going on. And frankly, our government doesn't want to handle this pandemic. It is beneficial on a federal level for our executive branch, for our president, to have this pandemic just sort of explode into chaos. It is beneficial for our United States Postal Service to fail. And, that gives him the power to swap into true fascism. I mean, we're already in fascism, but that really takes us there. We're in a quasi dictatorship if that occurs. And you keep hearing people say, well, this can't happen. It can happen. That's how it happens, is you create chaos and you take advantage of things like chaos. So we need to be pushing back on that and being very vocal and saying this is not going to happen. The idea was floated this week that elections be delayed. That shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be working on that. If you do have questions and you're watching, please make sure to type them in the live chat. I will get to them as quickly as I can. But, we have a president that has brought his entourage, and all of them are just shady and perfectly happy to take advantage of our government and, turn it into their piggy bank. And that is really inappropriate. And we have a whole bunch of people running for office, at least 2 in this race, that won't even say the word fascism. I mean, it's fascism. We're shooting reporters. We're watching just outrageous, unchecked government graft and self-dealing. Like, it is obscene, and it's partnered with incompetence. So it's not even as if it's forgivable. It's not like the government is running so well and everybody is doing so well financially and everybody's health is covered. So, if they take a little extra on the side, I guess we could forgive it. No, it's not even that situation. It's complete incompetence. And the incompetence is covering graft up. Not that it's not covered, it's pretty out in the open. So if we're going to be sending people to Washington, D.C., we need to make sure they have the competency to deal with that sort of thing. We need to make sure that they have the ability to say, this is illegal and immoral, and we're going to take action against it. That's just it. There's going to be consequences. They're going to come early. They're going to come often. You can't be shady in these sorts of roles. Sorry, we're not doing it anymore. We don't really have any accountability going on in DC. We don't have any coming from the Republicans at all. And there's enough Democrats that maybe they vote the right way, but they're kind of quiet on the issue. Maybe it doesn't poll well. Maybe they don't want to get distracted, but it's distracting us from being able to deal with real issues because it's not being handled. And so that is problematic. While we were talking about people in DC, this week, I was contemplating whether or not to go forward, and I said I would talk today about it. The results of me talking through, a lot of my volunteers were just overwhelmingly positive and wanting me to continue as a write-in, which is, sort of a long shot, but we couldn't possibly make 2020 any worse. And wouldn't it be phenomenal for the point that you don't need money and a party to win if we did end up being successful? So at this point in time, we're going to proceed forward and write in. It doesn't really change anything at all as far as how the campaign works. The only thing that changes is, there's going to be a note up at polling stations that says I'm a write-in candidate, and they have to transfer the name to the ballot. That's it. That's really all that changes. So we're still going to be doing main raising. We're still going to be doing, 5 to 15 minute volunteering. If you want to help the campaign, it doesn't really matter where you are. There's all sorts of really super easy ways to help. Interact on social media, tell friends about it, put up a window sign. These things are all free, and it doesn't really matter where you are. Write a letter to the editor. If you want to tell an editor in Maine that main raising is awesome, that's great. But if you want to spread this idea and you're in Florida or Oregon or Oklahoma, and you want to say, hey, there's this great thing going on in Maine right now where there's a candidate who's taking no money and pushing all of the resources to the community and investing in the community, and just leave a note. That's a great thing you can do anywhere, because really, whether or not I win this election, that's an idea I want to spread. The idea I want to spread, and ideas are so much more powerful than campaigns, is let's find ways to get money out of politics for real. If we wait for there to be the political will to vote to overturn Citizens United, we are going to be old and gray. And let's not do that. Let's find ways to get money out of the system and get them where they belong before it is something that rips us apart even further. So again, if you want to get involved, just interact on social media. Ask people to follow me, whether it's online or just people tell a friend or a cousin or a family member, hey, if you follow this person online, they're doing interesting things with getting money out of politics. You can, if you know anybody in Maine, you can email, you can mail them. You can do a main raising if you have financial resources. Please do not do a main raising if you're financially strapped. The campaigns that are constantly begging you for money when you don't have food, we're not that campaign. Do not ever contribute a penny to anything I do if you are financially struggling. It is not appropriate, and it is abusive. So when you hear me pushing for main raising, if you are trying to figure out how you have to pick between food and rent, I am not talking to you. I'm trying to find ways to help you. Otherwise, keep engaged. Keep an eye out on things that are going both locally and nationally. We've got some fun stuff going in Maine. We have folks camped out at Portland City Hall. I swung by the other day and said hi to them. There's a lot of pressure on our system to say, let's do something that works for a bigger share of us than currently does now. And I think it's a really good time to take advantage of that. So if you are looking for an outlet for that energy, and you're looking for something that doesn't cost you money, because everybody in every campaign wants money from you, this campaign is a great place to focus that energy. If you have friends anywhere in the country that are looking for a place to focus their energy and are tired of always being told that they have to give money to a campaign, this is a great place to bring them, because that pressure is just not a part of this campaign at all, and it never will be. So I haven't had any questions. I will see you guys online. If you have any questions, you can always send them to me on Twitter. You can email me. And I will be back on Tuesday. I hope you get to enjoy the beautiful summer weather. And if you're in an area that's going to be impacted by the hurricane that looks like it's going to blow all the way up the coast, please make sure that you are safe and prudent and you're well prepared if you can be. And if you don't have the ability to prepare the resources for a hurricane, please make sure you at least know where closest shelters are and where those resources are that you can get to if it's a true emergency. Otherwise, I'll see you Tuesday and I will see you online.